Okay, thank you. Good morning. This is Tuesday, January 31st, 2023, and this is the House Republican Caucus. Just a few housekeeping items that we heard at the Leadership Committee meeting and was announced on the floor today. Tomorrow at noon, there will be a caucus of the whole for those two individuals. A caucus of the whole means kind of just like we gathered this morning as a legislature, and the Appropriations Committee will stand up and talk about the budget adjustment that they just passed out last evening, I believe, from the Appropriations Committee 8-4. So that will be tomorrow at noon. This means the budget adjustment will come up for second read Thursday. It'll be noticed tomorrow on the calendar for Thursday and Friday of this week. Next week sometime, not quite sure of the date yet, but the, what's the committee?
Discrimination policy,
Discrimination Policy Panel will meet sometime. We've already had the ethics and one other one. So this is the third of four, I believe. And then stay tuned because Susanna Davis may have other trainings throughout the session as well. So stay tuned to that. Most of you know here that Chris Mattos's wife gave birth to the baby boy last week. The name is Cash Christopher Matos. So we sent flowers on behalf of the caucus to them. I think they got them, where's Woody? Yesterday, Sunday, Saturday?
Today.
Okay. So thank you for doing that. Woody is our sunshine chair for that. So I know that Jim and Lynn and Pat and Woody are on approach. So I don't know who wants to take the lead and just give a brief rundown on BAA.
Woody, were you doing that? I'll defer to my senior colleague. Sorry, I couldn't help it. Thank you, Jim. I'll try to, this is still a work in progress. It's still being edited, but this is a summary and highlights of some of the things in the Budget Adjustment Act, and I think this will be available soon. It's just being reviewed now. So first of all, I think maybe some of the new members may not understand, but the Budget Adjustment Act is basically you're 6 months into the fiscal year. You've got 6 months of actuals in front of you. Oh my gosh, we're short in this area. We got too much in this area. So there's a lot of trading of funds back and forth. Additionally, what's done in this budget is, which is certainly prudent, you know, there is some ability to, we didn't pull down enough in terms of, you know, maybe federal Medicaid funds. So anytime we can do that, that frees up general fund dollars for other uses. So the general fund appropriation that the administration gave to us at the beginning of January was actually down slightly. I think initially it was down 1.2 million. We found a mistake in one of the allocations, so it ended up being actually general fund. That's our money. This is our income taxes, things we can spend as we see needed. It's actually down like 3 million. There's a lot of federal funds being drawn down from various department and agencies. Having said that, we then had a public hearing with a number of requests, most of them which are one-time requests. And then we had the various policy committees that looked over their areas of the budget and, you know, and for the most part gave a, you know, okay, and then added some. So I'll try to refrain from too much characterization, but the additions, and I haven't got the spreadsheet here, but it's close to $90 million, somewhere between 85 and $90 million. I'm sure Lynn or Pat,
What is it? 91.
Okay, so I'm off.
It's a million.
So, and all of, the money is for, good causes. I think one of the concerns that some of us have is, we're making decisions on next year's budget and the carry forward funds, and without the benefit of a more comprehensive conversation. Virtually, I think everything that the administration proposed in the base Budget Adjustment Act, the initial proposal, has been accepted. So then we've added to it. I just want to, Alec, I highlight a few things, and then my colleagues will certainly fill in if I've missed any. There's, like $11 million for the mental health department for traveling nurses. I mean, that's just the reality of the world we're in today. Unfortunately, they cost a lot more than perhaps an employed nurse. So you gotta do what you gotta do, and there's 11 million. There's money for 9.25 million for a psychiatric youth inpatient beds. There's a need for it. There might be a disagreement over where that goes. It's being talked about in terms of going down to Bennington. But there's a need for it. So that's $9 million. It's not, there is some language in there that provides some flexibility in terms of that process going forward. But that's 9 million. And, there certainly can be some questions about that. Some of you may be aware of the $3 million to help rural communities with grant writing, et cetera, as a resource, especially with the ARPA funds that the towns are receiving or able to receive. That's in there. This was a late request. There's $9.2 million to help organic dairy farmers. That came in actually Friday morning, based on a public hearing that the organic groups had with the House Agriculture Committee on Thursday. There is $30 million. I see Christine Caucus over there. $30 million, which is for broadband. That was in the governor's recommended proposal. That's to match a grant, which 114 million overall. So we're taking $30 million and leveraging it to do the state match for a much larger grant. That is for the so-called middle mile build out of broadband to really help our state. Christine can certainly give you a lot more details, and she probably will tomorrow afternoon. But very good investment. Many of us in rural areas, know the importance of continuing the efforts with broadband build out. So hopefully we get that grant. If we don't, we may have to change the wording to go for the next grant. There's $50 million for the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board. This came from the House General Committee. We all recognize the shortage of housing, and we can perhaps disagree as to where that right bucket is, but the committee chose to put $50 million to help put money in the pipeline so that future projects can be funded. Again, that's all the money. Actually, it's a little bit more than all the money the governor put in next year's budget. So that was one of the questions was raised. Are we making decisions on next year's budget ahead of time? There is also $5 million that was in the governor's recommend on what's called VHIP, the Vermont Home Improvement Program, where if you want to like convert or take a place that needs its run down, and get 35,000 or 50,000 to help make it habitable so you can have more rental housing, et cetera. We put some money into that last year. That's been gone. So there's another 5 million in this, and I think the governor had recommended more money in next year's budget. So anyhow, successful program. There is I'll call it general assistance. So this is the hotel motel program. That was not in the governor's recommended budget. The money for that program has been paid for by federal dollars since the pandemic started. I think currently we're using emergency rental assistance program money. That money runs out in March. So it begs the question, what do we do from March to June? And we can have a larger conversation in terms of next year's budget. Human Services Committee recommended that we spend, I think it was 13.4 million. They tried to put some priorities on that. Certainly families with children, adults over 60, folks with disabilities. House Appropriations one up that with another 7.5 million so that we didn't have to make any choices right now in terms of who's in the program, who's not in the program. But also added study language that you'll find in the bill. And I haven't got a copy of the actual final bill, so I can't tell you what page. But there is language in there that directs the Children's and Family, DCF, to come up with a work group, study group, all the various stakeholders, and try to come up with a plan to go forward in terms of trying to phase out of that program or end that program. So right now, that money, which is a total of 21 million, I believe, would carry that program through June 30th.
How much was that? Sorry.
21 million.
Thanks.
Yeah. There's other things. So I'm going to stop there. Pat, what am I missing?
I don't know. I think you covered all the basic. Yeah. I think you covered.
And Lynn's favorite is money for a, what do you call it? A temporary, but they say it might be 10 years. Where's Joe? Oh, okay. Thanks to the problems in Newbury of getting a new site, secure residential for.
Those are problems with the state, by the way. No.
I'm only picking on you, Joe. But.
No, they're different.
They're actually totally different programs.
Are they?
They have
Okay.
nothing to do with Newbury,
All
that
right.
4 million.
Okay, anyhow, so money is in the Budget Adjustment Act that came from the administration to put some temporary, I say temporary, they call them pods, they're really like tiny homes, I guess. Their idea, although it's not finalized, was to put it up by the St. Albans prison. And some folks from St. Albans have concerns, so, but that's in there. And it's not a done deal final in terms of it going there, but that's one of the facilities, one of the places that the state is looking at, figuring it's easier to do this on state-owned property, wherever it is, so.
Who would live there?
So is it
The
juvenile?
former Woodside
Woodside
juveniles,
Young people.
young people.
10 days or less.
Yeah.
That's- We don't have good options for holding these kids today.
We have not.
Yeah.
None.
Okay, so I'm just going to, if you're kind of finished with yours, I want to be mindful of Executive Director Holquist's time. So if you want to speak for a few minutes on the 30 million broadband in there, we certainly will give you a few minutes to speak to the caucus.
Oh, thank
Okay.
you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I have a call at 11:30, so I'll be stepping out. Yes, this is a part of a grant program that we had heard about from the federal government back last February. And in February, it was down in Washington, and they announced $1 billion program with 10 to 15 grants for the states, 100 to 75 to 100 million. And at that point, I kind of brushed it off, thinking we wouldn't be able to compete with some of these other states. But when I came in June to the next meeting with the NTI, the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, they asked me why we weren't, or Vermont wasn't applying. I told them that I didn't think we had a big chance because it takes a lot of work. And they said, you have a really good chance because you're the only state that's connecting every address to fiber optic broadband. And we think you'd have a very compelling application. And if you can get the telecom providers on board, so we took the challenge and came back. And getting the telecom providers on board is really a challenge because sometimes they don't play well together. But we successfully got the telecom providers on board. We're using existing fiber wherever it is in state. But this is really important in terms of the future. You know, I'm a former CEO of an electric utility, and I'm going to tell you that telecommunications is even more important than electricity today. You know, I'll never forget the meeting. We were all sitting around, and there was a bomb cyclone coming up the coast. We were meeting with the federal government, and they warned us we might lose telecommunications. And we looked at each other. Our faces went white because we can restore power now 4 times as fast as we used to because we have telecommunications. We lose that. We went out and bought three satellite phones. But at the end of the day, I just make it clear how important this is. And so we designed a network with redundant connections to Canada, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and New York, and then built what they call redundant rings within the state. So if you lose fiber from any direction, it'll be fed from another direction. So for those of you that might have been involved with some of these 911 failures, that happened because geographic redundancy was not there. This sets us up for having a redundant and resilient network, and with about 2/3 of it paid for from the federal government. So it's a very competitive grant. We stand a good chance, and that's what these funds are going to be used for, is to match that federal grant funding.
Thank you. And I apologize for the new legislators. Christine Holquist is the governor's appointment to the new Vermont Community Broadband Board. So, and another plug tomorrow between 4:15 and 5:15 down in the Pavilion Auditorium. Christine Holquist will be talking about broadband. Okay? So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So,
For all your support.
any other questions on the,
Not on that. Can I go back to the budget for a minute?
about,
Christine, a question for.
All right.
yeah, are we on, we can go back to BAA for a bit, okay? And then, okay.
So Christine, how much is the total grant? And how long do you have to spend it?
Total grant is 114 million. And we have 5 years to get the network constructed, which we believe is very doable.
And this is middle mile money, not last mile.
This is middle mile money. For those, just a quick explanation when it comes to these terms. If you think about a network like our highways, you have the first mile, which is like your interstates, limited access on and off. Middle mile is like your state highways. And then the last mile are your local state road, your local town roads. So we're focusing here with this grant on that middle mile.
Thank you.
I have a question also. Is that money, that grant money for the redundancy part of that?
Yes, it's all part of that redundancy building in that network.
Okay, so that money is going to allow you to build redundant networks everywhere you
Yes.
have boxes, have a
And
facility.
if you've been paying attention to the news, which I'm sure you have, you've been hearing attacks on electrical substations throughout the country. This is now becoming, this security issue is becoming even more important as we're facing more turmoil throughout the world, right?
Okay.
Any other questions for?
This is for Jim.
Any other questions on the broadband before we move on? Okay, go ahead.
Jim, so this $91 million extra in the budget adjustment, is that all general fund money?
Yeah. What I failed to mention before is Maria is also in the room. And Maria, if I said anything wrong, please correct me.
No, you are right on target.
So whenever, I space on something, Maria, what did we do? So she is our computer in the room. She keeps all of this in and check. So
Okay.
she can be a very good source, and I'm sure she's sitting in here. So if questions come up, I'm going to phone a friend. who's
Okay.
here. So as Patty mentioned earlier, there is a caucus of the whole tomorrow. And regardless of where you are on the bill as a whole, if there are questions in any area, ask Woody. He takes a ton of notes and he's got them on everything. No, in all seriousness, we all divide up the budget by areas. Like I have public safety now and Woody has DEVA, which is half a state budget. But we can get you to the person who can answer that. Obviously, you're welcome to ask on the floor. But if you, for background sake, if you want to get some information, please ask one of us and we will get you to the right person on committee. That part is not a partisan. We're all there to help each other with information. So that's all I wanted to add.
Okay. Mark?
If I could just say that, that $50 million to me isn't really necessary in the budget adjustment, and I'll tell you why. There's also federal money that came from Senator Leahy's package, I believe at least $10 million to the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board. I don't know how much more money is out there, but again, we just had a meeting in Morrisville and I was talking to a contractor down there, a fairly large one. Good contractors are basically booked out for 2 years. So to have this in the Budget Adjustment Act when we should be considering it in the overall budget for 2024, to me, is not appropriate.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that. We actually talked about that a little bit. I think the overriding concern was if we park this money with the HCB, it helps them, get developers on board with money in the pipeline for projects that will be next year, the year after. I don't think there's any expectation that this money is just going to be spent between now and June 30th. It was more to show the commitment there is no question, there is a lot of need there. It obviously deserves a more thorough conversation about what are the right areas to put that money in. I wasn't aware of the federal grant you were talking about. For one, I don't think we ever talked about that.
And again, it's important to look at those other issues that are, from what I heard from the realtors yesterday as well, that are going to allow for that housing to go forward. But right now, whether it's through Act 250, zoning, that sort of stuff, you can have all the money you want out there, and if it can't get there, it's not going to do any good. But anyway.
Good point.
Brian?
Thank you. You can sit down if you'd be more comfortable. But the $9 million you're talking about for organic farmers, was any of it discussed as far as, there are other farmers in the state that probably could use some help too. I'm just wondering why just organic farmers have the opportunity for that.
That was Representative Brennan's area of the budget, I think.
It's not my area of the budget.
Gonna blame Paige.
But it is an area of concern to me. And, it is what it is. They came, we heard, in answer to your question, who asked the question?
Brian.
They heard nothing in their public hearing from conventional farmers. I asked that question. And it did kind of, came just raised to the top for me as to a concern about why we're coming in at the last minute and just putting $9.2 million into organic. We heard some explanations and I asked that question about why they didn't do anything for conventional farmers. They didn't even discuss it.
What we heard was, they're getting squeezed right now. The organic price of milk is not what it was. It's gone down. And they have higher prices like we all do, higher grain, everything else. And they, I believe, said they were losing $9 a hundredweight. And some have already gone out of business. This proposal is paying them one time, $5 a hundredweight. It would amount to the 139 farms, it would amount to somewhere between 65 and 75,000 on average. Obviously, it'll be based on their volume. So, and then the other point that was made is conventional dairy farmers have a federal insurance program that they can buy into. And I think the state has tried to help with that. I do not believe the organic dairy farmers have such a program option.
Rodney, did you have a?
So, I mean, that was, I think, part of the reason why House Ag recommended it.
So, just to clarify a few things, organic farmers can sign up to that program, but the calculations on how it's calculated out, organic dairy farms don't qualify.
Okay.
And the state last year approved $2 million to reimburse farmers for joining that program. There's a fee. And there was very little payout, even to conventional farms there. But the price to conventional farms went up a lot.
Right.
Last year. So even though everything else went up to like everyone else, and even non-dairy farmers struggling with fuel and inputs and everything else, it's struggles across the board. And then the organic dairies have not seen a pay increase in 2 years. And a lot of them, because of the milk supply, are on a supply management program, so they can't make more milk to offset cost. And there was just a national rule change in organic that's going to, for enforcement of a rule to stop what a lot of large farms out in the Midwest were doing. Were buying conventional animals at a lower rate and then calling them, keeping them for a couple of months and calling them organic. So, and then the other one was pasture rule in organic. So the nationally they have decided to enforce that rule, which will probably lessen the number of big farms that will qualify again. So they think because of that, to tighten up the supply, and will, organic prices come back up.
Okay, so
And, so we did from conventional side, and what the conventional side is looking for is for us to push USDA to raise the cap on that milk margin program. It has for any other help.
thank you. So I'm going to move on from the BAA to, does anyone have any bills that they're like introducing or want to talk about right now that they may have received from Ledge Council? Bill?
Once again, I got the military retirement income exemption. This calls for 100% exemption with no threshold for eligibility. It calls for exemption for the spouses and children. What's the word I'm looking for?
Survivors benefits,
SVP.
survivors.
Survivors, yeah.
Oh, that one.
And it removes the $10,000. That's
So
gone.
it's exempt everything.
Right.
This is all okay with the.
Did you want to pass it around?
Pass it.
Oh,
I double checked with Ledge Council this morning just to make sure everything was good.
Does anybody else have a bill that they want to?
I
Think
know,
about-
Patty.
Right.
I got this morning. I have submitted a bill to address texting and distracted driving. That was announced on the floor this morning. This bill here is just in case that one doesn't go anywhere, like it hasn't for the last 6 years. This bill is going to require or request that all public safety and officers in the state, Sheriff's Association, state police will do a study over the coming summer and report back to the legislature as to how to improve making sure that these laws are abided by and enforcement is going to be, they're going to address enforcement to try to figure out a way to make enforcement an easier task for the courts. That's what this bill is about. And
Did you want to pass it
I
around?
would like to
Okay.
pass it around if anybody's interested in it.
Okay.
I got a lot of signatures on the texting and distracted driving bill on both sides of the aisle, so.
Okay. Any other bills? So special, I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, the special caucuses, like the National Guard caucus, is Lisa here? Do I see Lisa Hango here anywhere? Lisa, anything?
Nothing right at the immediate moment, although the organic farming request did come to the rural caucus.
Okay.
Not very many rural caucus members signed on to a letter of support for that $9.2 million. And I think the reason was similar to what the Appropriations Committee found. There wasn't enough information, and it came at such a last minute 11th hour that we really didn't have time to fully delve into it. And the only folks we heard from in the rural caucus were the organic farm organization folks. So it really was kind of a one-sided presentation. And anyway, so it's gone to appropriations and they've made their decisions.
Okay. Anything else on the rural caucus before we?
I don't think so. The $3 million for rural infrastructure assistance still remains in the BAA. The House Commerce and House Government Ops committees are hammering out some language right now on that. So we'll keep you posted on it.
Okay.
That's it. Thanks for me.
Terry, Women's Caucus?
Yeah, sure. In the last Women's Caucus, most of the discussion was from Let's Grow Kids and how they have a 4-year plan to implement what's called the RAND report for childcare. And I will no longer be reporting on Women's Caucus. Ashley Bartley has graciously volunteered to do that.
Great.
Thank you, Ashley.
Okay. Now I know of two other, I'm not probably missing some, but the Social Equity Caucus and Older Vermonters Caucus. Does anybody go to any of those? And am I missing one?
Yeah, you're missing a big one.
James goes.
Oh, the Futures Caucus.
The big one.
The Futures Caucus, which had a
We had an
gathering.
event. I want to thank everyone that came to our event last week. It was well attended.
But I'm too old.
No, we don't keep anyone. We're going to try to do another one of those soon. We're working with some organizations to maybe do a panel or other things like that. So I won't have to talk at it, but thank you all for going. Stay tuned for some more stuff we'll be doing. And everyone's welcome. Doesn't matter age.
That's not what you said last week.
That's exactly what I said.
Sportsman's Caucus, Pat Brennan?
Yeah, just want to briefly say we're having a meeting, our first meeting in like 3 years because of COVID and everything. Thursday night, 4:00, 270, which is right through that wall. Don't go that way though, just go to the door. And we're going to have the Commissioner of Fish and Wildlife, a game warden yet to be named, and the Joe Bashar, who is our Northeast coordinator for NASC. The National Assembly of Sports Wisconsin is coming to meet everybody, and I hope you can make it because we've got 3 guest speakers. I know it's 4:00 and it's over here, but try to make an appearance.
Pat, we're going to be on the
4 p.m. Thursday. Okay.
At 4?
The floor starts at 3.
Oh, yeah. the budget is-
We're on at 3, right? Or has she changed that?
No.
I may have to, that's the way it is right now. Anyway, I may have to look at rearranging that for next week. So, good point, thank you.
Okay.
On the floor. with an
Oh, yeah, and I'm
announcement?
gonna send out an email, House email too. so
Okay,
I'll keep you posted.
okay. Mike?
Yeah, on behalf of the Guard Caucus, I met with the Deputy Adjutant General and Adjutant General yesterday. We've got that Guard 101 briefing we're gonna do on Valentine's Day of all days at 8 o'clock in the morning. So more for your friends than yourselves, if you hear what I'm saying, is bring a friend to that, because I think the more we can educate people on what the Guard truly brings to the table for all Vermonters, helps our chances, I think, with
Where do you historically meet? This room?
yeah, we've been meeting here, Lisa, right? Is that gonna change or gonna be right
It's
here?
either this room or the one next door. I think we're technically assigned to the one next door, but we've been meeting in here. So just look for us in either room, 8 a.m. on February 14th. And I want to thank Representative Morgan for taking on this task of educating us, because he's putting a lot of work into it. So I think it'll be a really good presentation.
Okay. Anything else?
Just one quick thing. If you haven't noticed, the Vermont Veterans Home is in the card room today.
Yes.
It's a very good organization. It helps those that have borne the battle, basically, and you should stop by and talk to those folks. It's a state-owned facility and very nice facility.
For those new and that do not know, the Vermont Veterans Home is in Bennington, Vermont. Has 138 beds, I think I was told today, of which I think 117 are currently filled. So it would behoove you to go talk to, there's several people there, two of whom you may know, former Representative Peter Fagan and former Representative Larry Coopely have been appointed to the Vermont Veterans Home Board. So thank you for that, Woody. Anything else? Okay. Well,
I just want to mention, you'll see, it's online, the Budget Adjustment Act bill, and obviously we're having a caucus of the whole tomorrow. If you want to offer any amendments, the committee will hear those amendments. I believe it is Thursday morning, and it's on our schedule. So whatever, I'm not suggesting you do, but if you do, the committee will do them Thursday morning. And if there's amendments that pop up from ideas after second reading on Thursday, then we'll listen to them Friday morning before.
okay. All right, great. Okay, have a great